So now let's move on to learn about types of listening. As we have already understood when we talked about communication, that communication does have different kinds of types in itself. Similarly, the listening can also have different types. So let's understand what are the different types of listening. The first type is known as informative listening. The purpose of this kind of listening is to gather information, and there are some very important skills now which we need to understand in case of practicing informative listening. So first thing that we need to remember that here one skill is to remember, that is vocabulary. We need to have a very good vocabulary in order to gather information, also to store that information in our mind, and also in order to recall that information. Let us say for example, maybe at the time of writing your answer sheets, or maybe at the time of speaking it to some of your friends, or at the time of recalling at the lecture or seminars, etc., etc. Okay, so the first kind of listening is informative listening. The purpose of this kind of listening is to retain information, gather information, and for gathering that information effectively you need to have very good vocabulary. So this first skill that when it comes to listening is to gather a very good vocabulary. Either we can practice vocabulary on ourselves, or we can also work a specific kind of vocabulary related to that particular piece of information. Let us say for example, if the information about agriculture, we can gather as many words and terms about agriculture as they are possible. The second thing that we need to remember is that another skill that we must have when we practice informative listening is concentration. Because when somebody tells you about information, he may be telling you a lot of things, and there must be some logical reasoning behind that information. There would be logical relationships among all the pieces of information that he or she is sharing. So in order to relate all these different pieces of information, we need to have concentration, and then also memory, because everything that we understand, everything that we listen ultimately has to go to memory, so that we can recall it at the time when we want it to reproduce. Let us say for example, at the time of writing, or at the time of telling to somebody else. So the first kind of or first type of listening is informative listening, which needs these three skills: vocabulary, concentration, and memory. The second type of listening is relationship listening. The purpose of this kind of listening is to maintain very good relationship with the people. So it is a kind of emotional behavior that we are practicing when we talk about relationship listening. So what are the skills those which are involved in this kind of listening? First one is attending. If somebody is crying, if somebody is sobbing, if somebody is calling for your attention, we must attend him or her. The first thing is that we must know how to attend, how to take charge of his or her mind, how to feel him or her comfortable, and then only he or she will be able to share her feelings and emotions with you. And when once you attend that particular person and she feels friendly, he feels friendly and feels like sharing something, the second aspect comes, or second skills comes, is supporting. So we should be able to show some kind of support to him or her when we are attending that particular person. And most importantly, that there is something that is known in personality development and in language skill in general, that is empathizing. We should be able to feel like that person. We should be feeling like that person, so that that person should understand that he or she is not alone, that is in that particular bad shape. Okay, by empathizing, we give some kind of moral support to that particular person, and also we learn about different difficulties in human life as well. So this is the second kind of listening, second type of listening, which is known as relationship listening, under which we need to have these three major skills. One is attending, second one is supporting, and third one is empathizing. There is something that is called as appreciative listening as well. Let us say, for example, you go to musical concerts. Okay, what do you do by going to musical concert? You actually appreciate the singing and the music of the musicians as well as the singers. Okay, so when we appreciate, or let us say praise, or try and evaluate them, that is called as appreciative listening. So in which you need to focus on the presentation that is going on in front of you, how the singers sing, how the musicians play their music. Perception is how do you understand about what they play there, whether songs or whether music, but how do you interpret them, how do you understand them, that is the skill that is involved here. And you also compare that experience, the present experience, with your previous experience. On the basis of the comparison, you appreciate that something that you listen right now is good or better or bad or worse. Let us say, for example, there are nowadays many different kinds of songs which are recreated. I mean, some 10, 15, 20 years ago, the same songs were popular once upon a time. Now, the same lyrics are and the same music composition are being played or being sung by the new singers and music players. If you listen to both songs one after another, you would be able to appreciate between these two varieties of song on the basis of your on the basis of the presentation and the perception and previous experience. So these are the three different types of listening that we have learned so far. Let's move on and understand some more. So what are those? Critical listening, it is very important one. I think that when you become a graduate student, after graduation, every student must have this ability to practice critical listening. Everything that we listen is not true. Everything that we read is also not true. So we must be able to differentiate among all the kind of true facts, manufactured facts, natural facts, historical facts, everything. And in order to do that, we must need a kind of skill, and that kind of skill is known as critical listening. There is something that is known as critical thinking as well. We are going to look into critical thinking as well little later, but let's understand about critical thinking first. So what is critical thinking? Critical thinking involves our ability to understand the character of the speaker. I mean, the credibility of the speaker. Rather than saying character, I should say credibility. Whether whatever speaker is saying, whether he is credible or not credible, whether we can trust on him or her or not. And it comes from the past behavior of that particular person. Also, a kind of cultural background that person has and social practices that person has. So if you focus little bit on the person's socio-cultural background and whatever he and she is speaking, you can establish a kind of trust between you and that particular person's character, that is known as ethos. So when we listen to any political leader, for example, of course the political leader will try to show that he is like you, okay. I mean, he would be practicing ethos at you, okay. He will like to show you that he is very much like you. He is not anyone who is different than you. That is called as ethos. At the same time, when we listen, we should be able to understand, identify that this political man is trying deliberately to be like us. And then, how can we criticize it? We can simply go back to his cultural and social background and his behavior. If it is very much like us, we can think that he is a sincere person like us, and therefore he is trying to establish a kind of emotional bond between us. But if he is not like us and he tries to show that he is like us, then we can easily identify that that particular political person is just trying to catch your attention by saying or by showing you that he is like us, okay. The second thing that we must understand when we understand about critical listening is logos. Logos stand for words and phrases, or choice of words and phrases by the speaker. There would be speakers who purposefully try to use certain kind of words and phrases in order to catch our attention, in order to impress the audience. And there would be different kind of choices. Let us say, for example, if you find Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, comes to Khandesh part, okay, he would start speaking in Khandeshi. If he goes to Gujarat, then he would find he starts speaking in Gujarati. If he goes to Tamil Nadu, he would probably start his speech with Tamil. Though he cannot deliver the full speech in Tamil, he would be speaking some words of Tamil. The choice of those words and phrases are called as logos, and they also make a kind of impact on the listener. So logos, words and phrases, and there are different kind of symbols. Let us say, for example, let us take the same example. If Narendra Modi goes to Himachal Pradesh, he would be wearing that particular cap which is owned by the people over there. If he comes to Pune, then Pune people have a special Puneri Pagri, then he would be wearing that as well. So that is all the symbol that tries to create a kind of ethos and a kind of emotional relationship between the speaker and the listener. We need, as a listener, we need to identify that logos and the intention of that particular speaker by identifying what kind of words and phrases are chosen for what particular purpose. And finally, pathos. Remember, every speaker in any sector, may it be teacher, may it be political person, may it be a salesman, he will once try to catch hold of your emotions. And once your emotions are caught by that particular person, he becomes successful in his communication. So there are different tactics by which the emotion or pathos are caught by different kind of people. As I have already mentioned that there would be a salesman who would be probably talk good about your life, your experiences and your choices, maybe because of what he wants to please you, he wants to praise you, and in that way he is going to catch hold of your emotions. A very good example which we have already studied in our additional English is the fortune teller. Remember that poem Fortune Teller is about catching hold of the emotion or pathos of that particular couple which is half Indian, half foreigner, and by praising that particular wife and the husband, the fortune teller gets 1 rupee, which was high cost at that particular period of time when that poem was written. So this is how pathos is practiced, and therefore in order to be a good listener we need to understand what kind of tactics are played when the speaker chooses to appeal emotions of the audience. So therefore, this is also one very important type of listening. Now, there is something that is called as discriminative listening. The purpose of this kind of listening is to differentiate among the information and sounds that we listen. The first skill is that our hearing ability, that we can even hear the minute sounds. We can understand and differentiate it between the minute differences among different kinds of sounds. That is what is the first skill that is involved in discriminative listening. So it is hearing ability. The second skill is awareness of sound structure, which is known as suprasegmental features. Okay, let us say, for example, in yesterday's lecture I had already mentioned you that the word sorry or please can be said in different tones, and just by listening to that particular tone one can understand the mood of that particular person, because just somebody is saying please, it is not that he is urging you, no. So if somebody is urging you right from bottom of his or her heart, she would say sir please. Okay, if somebody has to do it forcefully, he says please sir, you know, there would be difference between the way in which that word please or thank you or sorry is pronounced. The mood of that particular speaker can be identified, and there would be a lot of these kind of things which come under suprasegmental features of language of English. Okay, but a good listener, a discriminative listener, have the knowledge of all these kind of sound system of that particular language, structure of that particular language, and he would be able to discriminate or differentiate between the use of different kinds of sound system in that particular language. The final important skill that is involved in discriminative writing is to know paralanguage, or something that is known as non-verbal clues. Yesterday we talked about them, the body language, the kind of distance that we maintain, kind of touch that we give to the people or public, or let us say the partner in our communication, everything that is known as non-verbal clues. Okay, the distance we maintain, the kind of touch we do, the kind of distance we maintain, the kind of personal objects that we share between us, everything can mean something, and a good listener who practices discriminative listening can understand why that particular person is using that particular instrument. So this is how we have so far discussed types of listening. Now there are some barriers of listening. Okay, we will be learning with these barriers, but before that I would like to know from you whether